Hello everybody, welcome back to the new and improved MCReviews. Today we're going to be talking about a track that I've been pretty excited to review for a little while now, and that track is Division by Ephixa. Ephixa so far has been pretty decent. Some Wobbles was interesting, and Dubstep Killed Rock and Roll was okay, but in my opinion this track is by far my favourite of his work that we've reviewed so far. So, Division kicks off with a surprisingly awesome beat for a dubstep track. This beat kinda has two layers to it that play simultaneously. One being a pretty normal kick snare type deal, and the other being a much faster and shorter sample that repeats itself. The way that these two beats work together reminds me of the kind of synergy that you hear of between trap hats and 808s, because they are pretty damn different styles of beat, with one being short and fast and the other being slow and bassy, but together they sound really cool, and that is how Division's two beats sort of work together. Accompanying the beat is a quite muffled melody. This melody is quite dark and helps the song to get a pretty foreboding feel. About 12 seconds into the track, a little almost chiptune note plays and slowly echoes away, and this, while a small addition, sounds really cool in the song. 15 or so seconds later, a small melody pops in for about a second, accompanied by a heavy, distorted backing bass, which basically drowns out the rest of the song. And once that bass has subsided, everything except for the beat that was in the song earlier remains. It's just that it all gets muffled and then the build-up starts. The build-up basically works by slowly unmuffling each of these elements, sometimes adding in that little chiptune note and building up the beat and speed. The build-up ends with the same little melody that happened earlier before the song became a little more muffled. Okay, so just before we start to talk about this song's drop, the intro segment is really good. It's dark, it's somewhat unnerving, it builds an atmosphere, and it's not too generic in its structuring too. For rating this song on the intro alone, it would probably be a 8 or 7 out of 10. And now for the drop itself, and oh my god, it's a long drop. The first drop is very close to 2 minutes in length. The drop starts off with basically 3 elements, one being those amazing drums from the intro, the melody from the end of the build-up which kind of just fades away in the background, and the third and most significant element is the main bass. This bass is very low and quite metallic in its sound. It's a dark and very bassy sound, and I really like it. The bass is on a fairly simple chord progression, but it's a fast and pretty unique sound for this era of dubstep. Something about the bass that I really like is that every time its chord progression resets, it gets a little bit lower and bassier and a little bit darker and a little bit harder, and it's such a cool effect. This bass to me is just really badass. After about 30 seconds or so, the largest problem with the song starts to become apparent. It really doesn't change much. For around about 45 seconds, the drop kinda just repeats the elements that I just described and doesn't do enough with them to keep it overly interesting. Luckily, after those 45 seconds, the song does change somewhat. The same melody from the build-up plays again, signaling a change in the song. The bass suddenly changes quite dramatically and goes from sounding very hard and bassy as it did earlier to sounding a bit smoother and more metallic. The issue with this is that I substantially preferred the way that the bass sounded before the change. Earlier it was really hard and it was a really deep sound, similar to something you might hear in a deep house track like Strung Out by Rootkit. But with this change, it loses a lot of its oomph and starts to sound a lot more standard. I still like it, but not nearly as much. So the song then goes on to repeat everything basically in the exact same way it did earlier, just with this new bass that I find slightly worse for another 30 or so seconds. After those 30 seconds, the song again changes and my favourite part of this drop starts. And for the most part, it sounds pretty much the same as the first part of the drop, with the bass that I compared to Strung Out. The only major difference in this section of the drop being that somewhat frequently little unexpected things happen, like a bass is thrown in here for a second, or a little note pops up and then goes away. Little things like this that keep you on your toes and makes this part much more interesting than what the song had shown it was earlier. But this segment doesn't last too long, as after around about 10 seconds it just goes back to repeating the first and second segments, which, don't get me wrong, I just don't like them enough to see it repeated this much. So yeah, the biggest issue with this drop is that it's 2 minutes of mostly just things being repeated. Things that I really like, but still things that are being really overused in my mind. The beat is still amazing amazing, and the small, more unpredictable segment is amazing too, but as a whole, it's just too damn repetitive. Then we get to the second half of the song, and it's not even really worth explaining what happens in detail, because besides one thing, I've basically already explained it, because I'm pretty sure the song just literally repeats itself at this point. It's like the first drop ends, and then he just played the intro again, and calls it the midsection, and then plays the first build-up again, and calls it the second build-up, and then except for one small thing, he plays the first drop again, and then calls it the second drop. As far as I can see, the only difference between the first and second half of the song is that the very first segment of the so-called second drop has a minor melody which is added. It's just like a little beep. At first I actually thought it was my phone making the sound because it was kind of out of place in the song, and I mean, I'm thankful that he did change something, but it's not nearly enough. The bare minimum for me not to complain was for the midsection and second build-ups to be significantly different, and for the second drop to at least have one thing that is different or added that changes the entire drop. Not just 45 seconds of one small change to one portion of the drop. So yeah, this song basically just repeats itself and then ends with another little segment that sounds very similar to the intro and then just kind of fades out. Okay, so this is a pretty interesting track to talk about because I'm probably the most torn over this track than I have been at any other time in this review series so far. I both really like this song and really dislike this song at the exact same time. Structurally, this song is like a 3 out of 10, but sound design wise, it's more like a 7 or 8. So I guess we'll start with the positives. Almost all of the individual elements, sounds, chord, progressions, and beats, I absolutely love in this song. They're dark, they're intense, they set an atmosphere, they're unique. These are all things I adore in music. I feel like this is one of the first Monstercat tracks to really go for a dark and ominous sound and actually do it well and do it properly. And for dubstep, this song sits in a pretty interesting place. In a similar way to Metropolis, this song is really chill for dubstep. It's not like chill step or garage, but compared to 99% of dubstep from 2011, this track is a lot more calm and down-tempo, which is a really cool thing to go for in such a heavy genre as dubstep. The beat in this song is the best in a dubstep song so far, and debatably the best beat that I've heard in this series so far. As for the negatives, it's just so goddamn repetitive and too long for its own good. This might be the worst example of how to structure a song I've found so far. It's on par with something like Limitless in that regard. With the good and the bad in mind, the only place that I'm happy putting this track is at a 5 out of 10. So much of me wants to give it a 7, and so much of me wants to give it a 3, but I had to meet in the middle. Though I gave the song a 5, don't let that make it sound like it's mediocre. I love this song. I just think that looking at it critically, it's really flawed. But yeah, that was Division by Ephixa. The track shows that on a sound design standpoint, I think that Ephixa has some really good potential. He just needed to work on song structure. But nonetheless, I'm really excited to see what he next released. Let me know in the comments if you can look past its flaws and still enjoy it, or if the issues are too much for you to ignore. You can be expecting Pete's review of Hold Fast in 2 days' time on Sunday, and then my review of Technician, the Neilio remix, the Monday after that. But until then, thanks for watching and goodbye.